Yes, sir. Welcome back to Talking Nets, episode 39, a special episode. We have got a special guest, the smoothest voice you've ever heard on the Yes Network, and definitely on this pod. One, Michael Grady joins us today. Michael Grady, say what's up.
Good to be on with you guys. No, appreciate you, brother.
He's got the silky smooth R&B voice. Hudson, say what's up, bro.
I'll take it.
What's up, everybody? How are we doing? But honestly, let's just get into it with Michael because I know that's what everyone's here for.
Yeah, of course. So we had Iron Eagle a couple weeks ago, and I've been trying to get the whole Yes Network crew, and I was able to reach out to Grady. He was nice enough to set up a time and come on. So for those of you that don't know, if you watch the Nets, you should know exactly who Michael Grady is. But if I got to fill you in a little bit, he's a Brooklyn Nets courtside reporter, hailing from Indiana. He's been with the Nets the last 3 years, the Yes Network the last 3 years. You might even have seen him on Yankees batting practice. Guy's got an Emmy under his belt. He does some photography. He lives on the Jersey side. Michael, let me ask you a question, right?
Mm-hmm.
You being from Indiana, did you grow up a Pacers fan? Are you really a Pacers fan? Now you're a Nets fan? Give us some background on, how you got into basketball and who you were originally rooting for, and I guess how you made your way to New York.
Yeah, I grew up a Pacers fan during that Reggie Miller era that bled into the Jermaine O'Neal and the Ron Artest era, and then I started working with the Pacers. Probably around 2008, doing MC stuff. And then became the PA announcer Paul George's rookie year and was the PA announcer for the Pacers all the way through Paul George's last year with Indiana, doing the PA stuff before moving to New York. And so also hosted a morning radio show for 8 years there in Indianapolis and was a sports anchor too on one of the local TV stations. So did a little bit of everything out there. But yeah, Pacers fan, Colts fan. When you work with the team, the energy changes a little bit. Of course, you're a fan. You want to see them do well and things like that. But when you come to New York, you're in that Brooklyn Nets locker room. One of the things I realized the very first time the Nets and the Pacers played each other, the enjoyment of my job rests on how well the Nets play. And so if they have an incredible performance, I know that I'm going to have a good time in that locker room. And if they stink it up, then it's not so fun in that locker room. So I found myself pulling from the Nets right away. So there's always love for the Pacers, but I don't know those guys on that roster right now, with the exception of Miles Turner. He was there when I was there. And then there's people who work for the franchise who I consider family. But the guys on the court, I don't know Malcolm Brogdon that well. I don't know, I know Victor Oladipo a little bit for his time at IU. But I'm traveling with the Nets, hotels, buses, all that type of stuff. So that type of camaraderie you build and the trust that you build, that's kind of where my mind has been since moving to New York.
Yeah, you're with us. Hashtag we go hard. I'm sure Bankers Life Fieldhouse was lit back in the day. I feel like it wasn't that long ago that Pacers team was competitive, and before Paul George left, like they had it for a little bit, and that had to be a great time. I'm sure you were doing your thing. And as far as the Nets go, when you talk about the Nets stinking it up, we got a little history of stinking it up, but those days are in the past. Brighter days ahead. The future looks good, and we're looking forward to getting back into some basketball. Another question I have for you is about your photography, right? Because I know you do some photography, and I follow you on the gram, follow you on Twitter. I actually used to live in Jersey City on Grand Street downtown by Taqueria. I feel like I've seen you around that area, and then recently you were around Brooklyn in a very popular area. So, tell people maybe what they don't see from you on television about maybe your side gig, your side hobby, and what you've been working on with that.
Yeah, photography has always been a passion of mine for as long as I can remember. And I would say within the last 5 years or so, somewhere in that ballpark, I just really started attacking it the way I really wanted to. I remember saying a while back that, hey, if I wasn't in sports, I would be focusing on photography and that type of art. And then one day it hit me like, why can't I do both? Why can't I take advantage of my downtime and try to pursue it as much as I can? So I started working with models and doing all types of different type of photography. That was one of the things that excited me about taking the job with the Nets. Not only advancing my sports career, but I can build a base with my photography in New York, and then I'm traveling with the team. So I can travel to different cities and work with different models and work with different people on off days in different cities. In Phoenix, we're facing the Suns, and in LA, if it's the Lakers or Clippers. And that was just like taking advantage of my time. And so I did it for the art. Unbeknownst to me, I would meet my fiance through that endeavor. And we've been doing a lot of work together and continuing to work together on our photography and trying to expand in that. We just had some work published on Vogue Italia's website. And then, as you were alluding to, with what's happened with the protests and Black Lives Matter across the country, getting involved and joining the protests in Manhattan, in Brooklyn, here in Jersey City, and different places around, walking across the Brooklyn Bridge with a lot of folks, and just capturing the solidarity and the unity out there in the streets of people who are trying to bring about change in this country. So, photography's huge for me, man, and it's been awesome to document what's been going on.
Yeah, it's great to see. When I saw you were out in Jersey City, I think it was right by the town hall. I lived around the corner from the town hall, and my brother used to live in Prospect Heights. So it was like seeing places that my feet have physically been, and then also thinking about, man, you're capturing history right now. This is American history we're all living through. And it's awesome that you wear another hat. You know, you're on camera, but then you're behind the camera. And I'm another guy that, like, I do a lot of video editing. I do some photography. I just like to try a lot of different creative things. And, I've looked up to you as someone on the Yes Network, just being a young Black dude on the Yes Network. But then seeing you did the photography, I'm like, okay, I like this guy. This guy's really got a lot of things going that, I'm into as well. So it's awesome to see.
Yeah, it's important to, I know that we have kind of a one-track mind at times with our career, but it's definitely important to just pursue the things that we love, find time for the things that we love or have interest in, so that we don't have regret later. So, and that's one of the things I've always loved about, New York, is you could pass someone like yourself, or you have on the street, and I do this, but I also do this, and I do that, and I do this, and it's just that hustle that I've always loved about that New York vibe, if you know what I'm saying. So I respect it.
How did you feel like the pace of everything shift working, with the Pacers, and then coming to Brooklyn, coming to the big city? Not to say Indianapolis isn't a big city, but it's New York. So how did you feel everything shift for you as you came to the city?
Yeah, I always felt a connection to New York, and when visiting, one through music, TV, from a distance in Indiana, my observation of New York and feeling a connection, and then coming to the city for the first time, visiting and navigating, and it just felt right. I've always had this appreciation and fondness for 80s New York, which is obviously before both of your time, but the Warhols, the Basquiat's, the Keith Harons, the artists of that time who were doing so many different things. And I just had a great appreciation for it, and an understanding of what it meant to be of what it meant to just kind of dive in head first. And that's one of the things I respected, and you go to another city and like, oh, where you from? Oh, you're from such and such. Oh, that's cool. And you have a little conversation about it. Where you from? In New York, it's like, they don't care. It's like, okay, you're a New Yorker now. Keep moving. Let's go. So I've always, I jumped in and went. So I moved to New York, and the very next day after moving in, I had my first preseason game. So I didn't even have time to get adjusted. It was like, just dive in. So I appreciated that. There wasn't a big culture shock or anything like that. I understood that cost of living was going to be crazy as hell. I knew that the pace was going to be what it was going to be. And the people were, the perception about niceness, rude people in New York is not really what a lot of people like to think it is. A lot of people are really cool, people really dope here. And it felt like family from day one.
That's
Awesome.
good stuff. I think in Brooklyn especially, there's that kind of a more familial vibe, whether it be from the Nets or even just, like the borough itself. It always seems
Yeah.
to be more together. And the Nets, they showed a lot of solidarity along with the Barclays Center. They were a rallying point for a lot of these Black Lives Matter protests, as well as they've done a lot of work with, the gay community and all of their Pride nights. So, you yourself being, an outspoken activist, how does it feel to be a part of an organization that supports these movements as much as the Nets and the Barclays Center do?
I mean, it just feels right. It makes you feel comfortable, and knowing that the people that you're affiliated with, that they have your back. And when there's serious issues like this going on, not every company is taking that approach. Some of these companies have the feeling that saying the words Black Lives Matter is controversial, when really there's nothing controversial about it. There's nothing controversial about fighting for change and saying that police brutality and racism and racial oppression is wrong. And so, having the courage to say that, despite whatever backlash there may be from people who are ill-informed, you just certainly respect that. And when you make a move like what I did, where I had 3 different jobs in Indianapolis, radio show, sports in the evening, PA announcer for the Pacers, in some people's eyes, there's really no reason to leave. But I wanted to see how far I could push my gifts that I had been working on since, my high school years. And so there's certainly risk involved when you move out of your comfort zone. My family, friends, everybody there in Indianapolis, and then moving to New York, where I really didn't know anybody. And I'm going from the work environment that I had there and the people that I knew and worked fairly well with in Indianapolis to an entirely group of people who I don't know, and for organizations that I'm not all that, familiar with, other than what I see on television. But to make that move and to see how welcoming those people are, to see how inclusive and how diverse the Nets organization is and the Barclays Center is, it's just one of those reaffirming things that, man, you made the right call. You made the right decision in coming out here, and let's all unite and bring about change.
We're on the right side of history. I feel like, Talking Nets, our podcast, we took the opportunity to speak for Pride Month. Today being July 1st, we're the first day out of it, but I feel like we definitely did some work and put some things out there to maybe change some opinions. Also, obviously, with the movement that we've seen for Black Lives Matter, the Barclays Center being a hub, the whole franchise from the Nets to the Long Island Nets to the New York Liberty coming out and making a statement before others were ready to make a statement and doing it the right way. We're all on the right side of history, and I feel like we are making progress and we're getting there. This is just the beginning, and it's great to have someone like yourself using their platform, using their talents, and hustling. Before, when you said, talking about hustle, like that's the combination that people have to realize. If you want to be successful, it's hustle with talent and just not being afraid to jump out there and not being afraid to use your platform and do what's right. And I think we're getting more people than ever to understand that, and more people than ever are realizing that, hey, I might be a broadcaster, I might be a podcaster, I might just be a college student, but I have a voice, I have an opinion, and if what I'm saying is right, it's worth you listening and it's worth me putting it out there. So, Hudson, you got any other questions for Michael Grady?
I mean, I guess the last thing I want to say is, all right, so obviously you came from Indy. We got another person within the Nets that also came from that Pacers organization. 2 big acquisitions, Karis LeVert, Michael Grady. Which one was a bigger acquisition for the history of the Nets?
Well, only one of those guys dropped 50 on the Celtics on national television. Yeah, I'm gonna give it to Karis. Karis is a special talent, and I don't think very many people thought he would blossom the way that he has blossomed in the NBA, given his injuries that he had in college. And so I know their injuries have creeped up in his time in the NBA as well. But man, when he is on, he is something special. So no, I'm gonna give it to K. He's the main event. He's the main event. I don't even know if I'm the appetizer.
Hey, that's a perfect segue into our segments, because I'm hoping Karis is the main event, probably averaging 30 points when we get to Orlando. And it's time now to get into our actual episode, into our segments. For the listeners of Talking Nets, we do the segments like this. We start off with what's now, talking about what's now in the NBA and in just the basketball world. Then we go into what's next. But this week and last week, we've been getting a lot of reports of who's in and who's out. So we're adding a new segment in called Who's In, Who's Out. Then we'll go to what's next, and then we'll go to what's next. Looking forward to next week, this whole month, and talking more about what's to come. So Grady's going to rock with us. He's going to stay on the pod. He's going to talk a little bit about everything that we've got, different news, different updates, things that have come out in the past week. So let's get into it, starting with what's now. Players can replace names on jerseys with statements of social justice, but it just came out that they will not wear names of any deceased person or people. So I think this is a good move by the NBA, letting the players, show, I guess, solidarity with the jerseys and also show support for whatever they want to show support for, bigger than just having their last name as they usually would. What do you guys think about this move to have statements on the back of the jerseys, or maybe acronyms, or, I mean, who knows? We'll see what happens when it happens, but we know they won't put any names of people that have passed, but they will have the open option to write whatever they'd like.
I think it's a good move. I think it's a good gesture. I think that the NBA has no choice, given some players' reservation about going and losing momentum in the movement, that they have to do something and think of ways that they can keep the message flowing. Not just the Black Lives Matter, but whatever is on the hearts of these players who are going to be competing in Orlando. And so I think it's a good gesture. There's certainly more, and I think more will come out on other things that they are going to be doing. But that's one way that players individually can get their message out about something that's near and dear to their heart, something that's very important to them. And it'll be the topic of one-on-one interviews before and after games and things like that, where guys can let their voice be heard about what's important to them.
You know, like Grady said, it's necessary. The NBA had to come out. They had to do something like this with all of the concerns that players are raising. I mean, players are talking about, not playing because they don't want to lose momentum. They don't want to stop the movement. But aside from that, I also think it's a great move for the NBA, because the amount of content, for them as a business that this is going to generate is going to be huge. I mean, obviously we're going to see a lot of people, talking about, BLM and all of these other issues, but we're going to see people like Spencer Dinwiddie, who's coming out. He said he's going to put trillions on the back of his jersey if he plays. Obviously things have changed since he said that, but he's trying to bring light to other issues. So I think it's great for the NBA, both from a social justice perspective, but also the NBA is a smart league. They know how to make content for themselves. And that's just a ton of content that they can create right there, just out of, the names on the back of people's jerseys.
Yeah, we saw Ja Morant, number 12. I think he put on his Instagram story or something. A fan made a jersey that said FUCK 12. And then he had to come out and apologize for that. He's a young guy. I think he was going more for the social media angle, making a joke. We obviously know he wasn't going to come out with that. This is going to be positive, peaceful. I'm looking forward to seeing what guys come up with. Also looking forward to Black Lives Matter being on the court. Grady said, this is not a political statement. There's nothing to debate here. It's very simple unless you decide you want to complicate it. And I don't know. I know you, Hudson, you watch a lot of soccer, or I know you've seen the Premier League. The Premier League, I don't watch a lot of soccer, but I did watch some Premier League in the office, and I noticed they have a big ad or a big banner in the front row that says Black Lives Matter. This is in Europe. This is overseas. So if the Premier League can do it, what do you guys think about the NBA doing it?
I think it's the least that they can do. I still have some curiosities. I don't want to go so far as to say skepticism, but I do feel it will be a challenge to keep the message at the forefront while playing games. People are so hungry for basketball, and there are a lot of people who still aren't enlightened about the issues, who want a distraction, whether it's baseball, football, or basketball. They don't want to talk about Black Lives Matter. They don't want to talk about all these uncomfortable topics, but they would love to have the distraction of debating whether or not LeBron is going to beat Kawhi in the Western Conference Finals, or whether or not what the seeding is going to look like, or whether or not Milwaukee will come out of the Eastern Conference, or who's going to win the NBA championship, and all these things that have nothing to do with what so many have been passionate about, and the fire that's been lit under a lot of people over the course of the last month. And so I think it's a terrific gesture to have it there on the court. I think it's important that it's there on the court, and whatever they can do that while they're playing basketball to remind people of what is extremely important at this time. I'm here for it. I'm all for it. And that's just, that's one way to do it among other things.
Yeah. And we saw people have issues with it today. I saw someone on Twitter said, he was a Jazz fan. He said, I'm not watching any more Jazz games. If they put that on the court, you just lost a fan. And I forget who it was. I think it was Donovan Mitchell said, like, see ya, we don't want you to be a fan in the first place. Which, right. The Jazz aren't crying over one lost fan. Mitchell's definitely not crying over one lost fan. It's an important statement. And like he said, I mean, the fact that European soccer is making these movements before any American leagues. And I know there's timings with, leagues coming back and stuff. But these are people in Europe. On the back of every Premier League soccer jersey, it says Black Lives Matter. They're kneeling in solidarity before every game. It's not that complicated. It's not creating the same kind of issues. It shouldn't create the same kind of issues because it's not a political statement. It's just a statement of fact that Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, like just matter. Michael Shea, comedian, had a sketch where he said, Black Lives Matter. We're just saying matter. Just matter. Like that's not a lot to ask. You don't need to complicate it by saying it's the Democrats or it's Antifa or making it political. It's very simple. And I know there's a lot of players that were concerned about how this will be packaged, how the games will be broadcast, and making sure that social issues are at the forefront of this whole thing, and they will be. And I know there's some guys that decided that they were going to opt out because they feel like there's more that they could do outside of this bubble. So let's go to our next segment, which is Who's In, Who's Out, starting with Vince Carter, VC 15, Nets legend. He's out because he's retiring. And who would have thought Vince Carter's career would end like this? The Hawks aren't in, but he's out because he's done with his career. He's hanging it up. And we had a lot of talk on Nets Twitter about retiring his jersey, giving us a Vince Carter bobblehead night, and letting the players wear the throwback New Jersey Nets jerseys. I would love to see the Barclays Center do that. Joe Tsai has come out and said that we will see some throwback Nets jerseys. If we could package it and see a Vince Carter night, bobblehead night. I know some people are saying retiring the jersey is a little bit much. Some people even argued for Richard Jefferson to be retired before Vince Carter. I understand that, but Vince Carter, Vinsanity, VC is such a huge figure in the NBA. I feel like we got to give that man his roses this next season as soon as we can. What are you guys thinking about Vince Carter, his Nets legacy, him retiring? I know it was a couple of days ago, but let's harken back to that.
Yeah, I've always been a big Vince fan. And one of the big reasons I've been a fan of his is you watch basketball long enough, you see guys who are really talented, and they don't really add any bells and whistles to their game. They may enter the game as a ball handler, but they don't develop a jump shot, and that's it. You may see guys who are incredible leapers and dunkers, and they don't add other aspects to their game. And the only reason Vince was able to last as long as he did in the NBA, those 22 years, is because he evolved from being primarily a dunker when he entered the league. I mean, the guy could absolutely jump out of the gym. And I remember asking him about that. And he said he had to evolve his game because his knees started acting up. And so he just put in a lot of work on his jump shot. He could still, dunk. And even his time with the Nets, that amazing Alonzo Mourning dunk, among others, that was still at a time when his athleticism was starting to go on the decline slowly but surely. And so he developed his jump shot, and that helped him stick around in the league. And the fact that he embraced mentorship and things like that. And it's just so many things to love and appreciate about VC. And so I got to certainly believe that he'll be under consideration to have his jersey in the Raptors there at Barclays Center very soon, very soon. I know there are a lot of people who want to see it.
Yeah, definitely. And you do see teams like the Heat, I believe. No one's wearing 23 in the Heat. Michael Jordan never played for the Heat, never did anything with the Heat. They still retired his jersey. I mean, think about how much of an impact that Vince Carter has had on basketball, on its popularity, on basketball in Brooklyn. I guess in New Jersey at the time, how it shined a spotlight onto, that team playing in the swamp, playing in the Meadowlands. Like, he's such a big cultural focal point that if you have the opportunity to put his number in the rafters, to retire his number, you have to do it. Because think about, even from a business perspective, think about how much you can capitalize off of just being able to retire his number, to be able to have a Vince Carter bobblehead night, to be able to have his number in the rafters and have that up there for all time. This isn't a slight against Richard Jefferson. I think Richard Jefferson should have his number retired. But Vince Carter was just so transcendent and so transcendent with the Nets, even though he didn't play for so long, that I think it's almost a foregone conclusion at this point that I think it is going to be retired.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to hurt anyone or anything. I would love to see it happen, and I'm looking forward to when we can get back to the Barclays Center. We can get back to watching games. And Vince Carter, congrats. Enjoy retirement. We'd love to see you in Brooklyn. What do you play, 22 seasons? First-round pick. From one first-round pick, top pick, to another, Nick Claxton is out. So our young guy just got surgery a week ago on his labrum. I think he had arthroscopic labrum surgery. So he's out. He's not going to be joining us in Orlando. I really wanted to see more of him. What are you guys thinking about the young boy, young Clax?
I like Claxton, and a lot of people believe that he's going to be a very, very special player because he can do a little bit of everything. One of the things that I like about him is the fact that he has a very high motor. And I think having a motor, that's just something that you can't teach. You either have a guy who wants to go get everything or you have a guy who doesn't. And Nick wants to go get everything. He wants to block everything. And he's still figuring the game out. It's funny watching these young guys. The game, everything moves so fast. And you can literally see it on Nick's face when he was getting playing time on just how fast everything was moving and trying to process everything and doing the best that he could out on the court. He was able to do some special things. And so I can only imagine as the game slows down for him, and if he continues to work on his game, how special he can be for this Nets team. But shouts to him on a strong rookie campaign, and look forward to what he can do in the future.
Yeah, me too. And one thing I see from him, and I think this is starting to become a trend with drafted centers by the Brooklyn Nets, is he might have to put some weight on. He might have to get in the weight room with Jared Allen. But one thing I love about his game is that he plays so fluid. He plays almost closer to, a KD style than of like a pure center. We saw in that one game, he kind of had a breakout game. He put up 13 points and he stepped out. He hit some threes. I think that's big for him to be able to do that and to step out and play that stretch five position. Because if he isn't, if he can't put on that big weight, if he can't, end up looking like DeAndre Jordan, he is going to have to learn to step out. He's going to have to play that part of his game. And the way he plays, and he's just so smooth, I think there's a good possibility that he can work on that and he can step out. And I think that would be big for him in the future, as well as just the Nets in general.
Yeah, when he was playing, I think I saw some people giving him Chris Bosh comparisons, and some other players, they were saying that Claxton could be like. And I'm sure he learned a lot this season from Big J, and then I'm sure he also learned a lot from DJ, which is our next guy who's out, DeAndre Jordan. He's got the coronavirus. Supposedly he got it when he came back into market, like when he came back to New York, and he's opting out, which I'm fine with because I feel like, hey, take the time to rest along with KD and Kyrie, who, we acquired you along with KD, Kyrie. The vision is to see you run up and down the court with those guys. So be ready for that and, get your health together. And what are you guys thinking about DJ Dimes? I call him DJ Dimes like Danny Dimes because he's always dropping the dime, picking it up.
Right. No, I'm in agreement on that, take your time, focus on yourself, your family, get your body right, because this next season is going to be massive. And so, look, the team that's going to be going out there to Orlando, they're going to go to compete, try to win as many games as they can, make as much noise as they possibly can. And at the same time, there is still so much excitement building for what the team is going to have come December when the next league year starts, with Kyrie, with Kevin, DJ, and as many healthy bodies as they possibly can. And so that's a part of the focus too. And there'll be a lot of evaluating and seeing who's going to be a part of this future of this team, with the guys that are going to Orlando. And so yeah, it's definitely layered. It's about getting your mind and body right, but also thinking about what's best for you and your family, given the fact that we are still in the midst of a resurgence of this virus, and that so many people are starting to get it, and fears about Orlando and the security of this whole thing. And so for DeAndre getting it and deciding not to go, no issues with that whatsoever. Wilson Chandler doesn't have it from what we know, but made a similar decision that what's best for him and the safety of himself and his family was to not go and not risk it by going into that bubble.
Yeah, you can't knock anyone who is protecting their family who cites that as a concern. You really can't. There's just nothing you can say there. A lot of people on NBA Twitter have tried to, but I mean, what is there to say? If you're protecting your family, you're protecting your family. And I think what's good for him is that his spot is all but secured. He is exactly what he's going to be for next year and the year after that. So it's like almost whatever at this point. And I'm kind of in a spot where I'm like, okay, he's out. That just means we have more time to see Jarrett. We can see what he has to do. And I think he's a guy, Jarrett Allen, that has to prove a lot of doubters, a lot of haters wrong and show what he can do. And I think having less competition for minutes and being forced into these situations where he is going to have to play is big for him, because we need to see if he can continue some kind of momentum that he had going into, the stoppage.
Yeah, and last but not least on who's out, Grady just mentioned him, Wilson Chandler. Now, Wilson Chandler, if you listen to this podcast, you know I'm not a huge Wilson Chandler fan. His time with the Nets is up, and I'm not going to use this opportunity to knock him because we're not talking about his basketball play. We're not talking about him on the court. The Nets signed Justin Anderson to replace him. Wilson Chandler cited opting out, I think, to spend time with his grandmother and his family, and he's very outspoken on Twitter. He's spoken a lot, I think, in defense of Kyrie with Kendrick Perkins, and just about, social issues and the coronavirus, just everything he's spoken out. So good luck to him, and wish him well, but he will not be joining us in Orlando either. And I think now we should go right into what's Nets and talk more about the Nets. The Nets practice facility reopened June 30th. That was yesterday. And Woj tweeted out that the facility opened after being closed for several days. And the Nets had recent positive coronavirus tests with DeAndre Jordan and Spencer Dinwiddie. Spencer, who we're going to talk about now, he's been tweeting stuff out. He said, I think this morning he said day 6 that he's stuck in bed. But the biggest thing that I got from Spencer is that he wants to play. He's not saying that he's out just yet, but a lot of people are kind of making that conclusion for him that he'll be out. What are you guys thinking about the Nets facility opening back up in Brooklyn? While some states and some teams are choosing not to open or can't open right now. And then, our guy Spencer Dinwiddie, a guy that's looked like an all-star for us, a guy that was the MVP at points of this season, he's fighting the coronavirus right now as we speak.
Yeah, first off, I hope, for a speedy recovery for Spencer, knowing that he has it and that is experiencing symptoms is certainly a scary thing. And so wishing him a speedy recovery and hope that he gets well soon. But it's an interesting time, man. I was talking to Coach Vaughn a little bit earlier on a media scrum via Zoom, and the fact is that from a head coaching standpoint, you want to be hands-on with your guys, and given everything that's going on, you just simply cannot do that. And so he needs to get a game plan in place. He needs practices under his belt. He needs to make sure, checking in on conditioning of his team. I mentioned, getting game plans and all that type of stuff together. And he has to do it under extremely abnormal circumstances, something that we have never seen before. And even during the Zoom call, he's got his mask handy. He's in an office with the door closed, and he's got gloves on. And he's got to communicate with his entire staff and these players to make sure that everybody's ready to play. And not the players that he had back in mid-March when everything was shut down. Tyler Johnson is now in the mix. The other guys who are more role players are going to have to be relied on a whole lot more. And so with the facility opening up, they have a tough task ahead of them as they prepare to get ready to go to Orlando. Being able to have Spencer Dinwiddie back would obviously be a huge help because of all that he's able to do on the basketball court. And that 1-2 punch with him and Karras would be something fun to watch from a Nets fan perspective as we see them compete to secure that spot in the playoffs and then see what they do in the opening round. So would love to see him out there with respecting the decision that he makes, but we know what a difference he makes when he's on the court.
Definitely. But at the end of the day, if he is sick, if this does linger, you have to, allow him as a Nets fan to just do what's right for his body, do what's important. But he did come out. He did say after, I think it was Shams put out that tweet that said he was out. He said, I told Shams that I haven't made a decision yet if I'm in or if I'm out. He said he's going to ride it out. He's going to see what he can do. Obviously, everyone would love to see him play. Everyone would love to see him go out there with Karras. It's like the last ride of the old regime Nets. That's what me and Keith have been calling them since it's kind of, we know things are going to be different next season. We know there's going to be a lot of moves made. We know we might not see this team with this players again. So obviously everyone wants Spence to get that show off. We want to see him ball out one last time in the black and white, if it is that last time, if we do end up, trading him for whoever, or if he does end up just leaving. And I think that's something important to think about. But also at the end of the day, it's his health. And, as people, basketball players are people too. You have to allow them to do what's important for themselves. And I don't think really too many people on Nets Twitter are, bashing him and are going to bash him for staying out, because I think honestly on the whole that Nets Twitter is a pretty good place to be.
I don't know about that.
I like Nets Twitter. I like Nets Twitter.
I'm messing with you, bro. I know we're both on Nets Twitter all the time. And, Nets fans have their takes. They actually just came out with this, like, stages of Nets fans meme. And they have, like, the can do no wrong Nets fans. They have the, like, always downer Nets fans. The Nets fans that are always thinking we're going to sign or trade for Aaron Gordon, Drew Holiday, Bradley Beal. But shout out to Nets Twitter. I know we got a lot of people listening on Nets Twitter. Shout out to Spencer, man. We are rooting for you, Spence. We're rooting for you to beat the coronavirus, whether you come back or not. And, I would love to see his trillions on the back of his jersey in Orlando. When they came out with that first graphic of, like, all the players in the Disney, they look like Disney cartoons. They had Spence with the Bitcoin above him, and he was the only representative from the Nets in that cartoon. So I'd love to see him out there, trillions on his back, raising awareness for the United States debt that we all should know about. But another story that popped up, right, along the lines of players not playing and not going to Orlando is with KD. Now, KD is, they'll write anything about KD. They're trying to find something about KD any day because it gets clicks. And KD was on a show called Dog Talk, and his quote was, I feel me right now, I probably wouldn't have played because the unknown going into that situation looks crazy right now, seeing so many new cases. It's just so unpredictable. It's easy for me to say right now because I'm injured, but I probably wouldn't have went down there to Orlando. So KD is saying, hey, even if he was healthy, he wasn't going to go because this whole situation does not seem like this is it. It doesn't seem ideal. It doesn't seem safe. KD's saying, I probably would have chilled on this. And you guys think KD's just playing more into it, or you think he's being honest with how he feels about the whole bubble situation?
No, he had it. And so he went through all of that. He went through all of the confusion, trying to gain understanding of what it's all about. He watched, like all of us, the numbers surge, then go down. And as the country started to reopen in certain parts, that once again, another resurgence, and everybody's talking about going to Orlando, but Florida cases are through the roof, and, we're going to keep you safe in this bubble. So you can understand if players have some doubt about whether or not this is the safest thing. And so I don't doubt him when he says, no, I probably wouldn't go. You're competing for a championship, and there's a lot to play for, but you realize that there are some bigger things at play here also. So, and his target, his mindset has always been on next season. Next season just going to be starting a little bit later than what we all anticipated. So yeah, it was interesting and fun, I'm sure, for a lot of people to romanticize about the idea of, man, Kyrie and Kevin, they could both come back in Orlando. But in the reality, it's just not the best thing for them right now. And yeah, I believe Kevin's not alone in his feeling, because other players are saying, I don't think this is right for me either.
At the end of the day, it's a weird situation to be in. It's not normal. It's not anything that we have expected, we thought was ever going to happen. So you, as a person, I mean, even as me personally, obviously you want to compete, you want to win that championship, but you can't compete and win a championship if you get sick or something bad happens to you or something happens to your family. So just do what's best for yourself. Honestly, this is more of a just headline bait than anything else, because whatever KD would have done or wouldn't have done doesn't matter, because he's out anyways. So at this point, I think it's just the Nets media, and not to come after the Nets media or anything, because we know we got a vaunted Nets media member right here, just talking about KD and, doing their thing just to try and get those KD type clicks.
Yeah, we're Nets media too, and we're guilty as everybody else of talking about KD and Kyrie, and we had maybe 2 weeks where all Nets fans had that dream of them coming back, but neither one of these guys were going to play in Orlando. And that brings me to what I really want to talk about in this segment. What's next? What's Nets? Before we go on to what's next, do we care that the Nets are missing players? Do we care that, like, we're missing 5 or 6 guys? Like, do we think this really matters? I know some people now are calling for us to tank. Like, do we want to compete in Orlando, or do we want to drop off, get ready for the draft? And, Grady said for KD, it's always been next year. And for the Nets organization, we have been on to next year since about this time last year. This time last year, we got the news that KD, Kyrie, DJ were coming this way, and we knew it wasn't going to be the 2019-2020 season. It's always been the 2020-21 season. It's just crazy to think that Kyrie was one of the first guys to say, yo, we should reconsider. Maybe we shouldn't go out, and they killed him for this. And now you're starting to see a lot of guys say, no, I'm not going, or I've got the coronavirus. And Kyrie is looking better by the second. Shout out to you for, standing on that and not being afraid to stand on that. What are you guys thinking about the Nets' future right now, the near future right now? Like, does this bubble really matter to us? Like, what are you guys thinking? What are you guys looking forward to seeing or not looking forward to seeing in this next month or two?
I think everybody's opinion on this is, subjective. For those who are thinking championship and can't wait for a championship, then your attention is going to be geared more toward 2020 and 2021 and beyond. And so with the number of players that are going to be sitting out and the possibility of winning or being a big threat even in the first round, not necessarily being there, I'm sure a lot of people will feel a certain kind of way about that. But this is a big time evaluation period. And these guys, there are guys that are going to be out there that are going to be evaluated very closely. And they're going to try to go out there and compete and put their best foot forward. And you have to respect them for that. You can't improve draft position by tanking. Mathematically, it's going to be near impossible for the Wizards to catch you. So you're going to be that 7-8 spot in the Eastern Conference. So your draft position is pretty much set in stone. So nothing really is going to change there dramatically. And it just really comes down to competing and representing the name that's on the front of the jersey and whatever you put on the back of it when you're in Orlando. So it's a big time evaluation process, because we talk about something special that will develop next year. There are a lot of guys who are going to be competing in the Nets uniform in Orlando who may not have an opportunity to be a part of that journey. So you better believe that those guys are going to be busting their tail, putting their best foot forward in this audition period, if you will, to prove to Sean Marks and company that they deserve to be a part of this franchise moving forward. And they don't want to be on the trading block or be asked to go somewhere else by not being re-signed in the offseason. So there's still a lot to pay attention to, even though certainly on paper in a lot of people's minds, they're not a real threat in the Eastern Conference, given the people that are not going to be competing with the team in Orlando.
That's what I'm saying. This is a tryout period. This is a time for these players to come out and show that they have what it takes to be on a team that's led by KD and Kyrie. You think about players like Jared Allen. He's going to get a lot of minutes. He's going to have to get a lot of minutes. We haven't signed anyone to, be his backup. He's getting a lot of minutes. So he's going to have to go out there and show, I deserve to have a spot on this team, even, just for himself to prove his doubters wrong. But, people are thinking about him getting traded. if he wants to be on this team, he's got to play for that, or even play to get, have more leverage in his trade negotiations or whatever. You think about players like Chris Chiozza. Obviously, he's a marginal player, but think about it. If he balls out, you can say, oh, well, we have a new backup point guard. We don't need to necessarily keep Spence on the team. We can trade him and use him before his contract goes up. There's so many things to consider. And even just from a fan perspective, you're going to have so many things to watch for, even if it's not, KD and Kyrie going out there to win a championship. There's so many stories. There's so many things you can look at. And I think that's what's part of what's going to keep, people interested in this, is all of these storylines and all of the things that could happen or could not happen because of what's happening in Orlando.
We've been saying it for a while. Before we even knew about a bubble, before we knew the NBA season was going to be suspended. Shout out to you if you're listening and you heard Hudson and I say these guys are auditioning for next year around, episode like 18. Talking Nets fans, Talking Nets listeners, you guys know that we've been saying this for a while. Guys like Taurean Prince, show up. Guys like TLC, show us what you have. Chiozza, like the list goes on. During the regular season, we were saying, after the All-Star break, we were saying this second half is going to be an audition. And Grady, when Grady said audition, I'm like, that's exactly what we've been preaching, that these guys are trying out. These guys are playing to see who's going to fit with KD and Kyrie and get a chance to be on a dominant team. You already know the Nets are going to be a dominant team just off those two guys. This is going to be a competitive team that's going to compete for a championship. Do you want to be on it? And that's what I'm taking from this, right? I said to someone on Twitter, this is a win-win for me. Okay, say we drop out and, we get that draft pick, which I'm not really worried about that draft pick. It's going to be around 20-something. We'll see. Cool. Then we draft a player that we can put with KD, Kyrie, hopefully a talented player that slips and falls. But if we go out there and compete and shock some people and surprise some people, then maybe we know more about what we already have. And there are guys like Joe Harris that I'm looking forward to seeing get more shots up. There are guys like Karis LeVert that I'm looking forward to seeing that it wasn't just a fluke couple weeks. Karis is a star. So that's what I'm taking from it. I don't care if we lose all the games. I don't care if we win all the games. I just hope that we get to see the Nets play these games, and whatever comes from it is going to be good for us. I'm looking forward to it. Let's get into what's next. And I want to start off now talking about the schedules, since we're talking about the bubble and what we're going to see out there. Here's what we'll do. I'll read the schedule to you guys, and I just want each one of you to say what you think our record in these 8 games will be. So the Nets will open up against the Magic on July 31st. They will play the Wizards on August 2nd. Then we got to face the Bucks on August 4th, the Celtics August 5th. We got the Kings on the 7th, then the Clippers on the 9th, the Magic on the 11th, and the Trail Blazers on the 13th. I'm thinking the Nets will go 4-4. I think we can split and go 4-4. I don't think we're going to beat the Bucks. I don't think we're going to beat the Celtics. I don't think we're going to beat the Clippers. And then with those 2 games against the Magic, we'll probably split. But I think we can handle the Wizards. I think we can handle the Trail Blazers. What are you guys thinking about these 8 games, these Elite 8 games, these entry games, the first games into the bubble?
Well, I think it's going to be highly competitive. None of the low teams in the league. There's no cupcakes in there. And even the Wizards, who have the worst record of the teams there, are a team that you have to respect, and they're going to put everything on the line to compete and do the best that they can. And so it will not be easy in these games for the Nets. Those 8 games that will determine playoff seeding, but they'll get enough done, obviously, with the Wizards. Very slim chances of being able to come that 6.5 games that they're behind to overtake either the Nets or the Magic. Haven't heard much from the Magic in terms of who's sitting out or who's competing. All we know is that they should very well be at full strength. I know that they compete hard. So given the number of guys who aren't going to be playing from the Nets perspective, Orlando, they have an opportunity, right there to try to sneak up and try to take that 7 spot, and an opportunity to take on the Raptors or the Celtics, as opposed to, competing against Giannis and the Bucks. And so the Nets will do enough to get in for sure. I'm really curious what this roster and rotation is going to look like. Because it will not be easy, but everybody's in the same boat. I imagine that these games are going to look really, really sloppy initially as guys try to get their conditioning back, because there's really no way. I mean, you can practice as much as you want, but the adrenaline and all that comes from playing in real games, it's just really hard to simulate that. And given the restrictions that we have at these facilities and the workouts and proximity and all that other type of stuff, guys, when they get these first run, I can't even imagine what it's going to look like. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it might be really sloppy, but it's going to be fun to watch anyways. I mean, regardless, I think even with it being sloppy, I think that's almost fun to watch. I agree with Keith. I see 4-4, or maybe 3-5 if we, lose one of those games against the Kings, maybe. But I think what's really important is those games against the Magic, because we're only half a game up on them, and I think that's a competition to see who's going to not get swept. If I can be blunt, because I mean, I don't want to face the Bucks. Maybe we steal one, but I don't like our chances against the Bucks. I do like our chances against the Raptors to at least steal a couple of games. The Nets have played well against the Raptors in the past, even with these depleted rosters. So I think that is really what's going to be important. That first game against the Magic and that second to last game against the Magic are going to be huge deciders in what ends up being the future of the Nets, whether it's winning a couple of games or maybe getting swept out by Giannis.
I look at these 8 games, and I mean, at least in the beginning, I look at them as glorified practice scrimmages, exhibitions, right? Like in the NFL, when preseason comes, they will have, the Lions go to camp and they will practice with the Patriots, and, it gets intense, but at the end of the day, it's exhibition. It doesn't count for anything. These games are going to count. I think it's going to come down to what teams practice the best, what teams can get up for practice, what teams run the best practices. And the thought hit me this week, I started to miss Kenny Atkinson. I'm like, man, if these are going to be glorified practices, if this is going to be about who runs practice the best, we haven't run that many practices with Jacques Vaughn. Kenny Atkinson was the guy for years, so I wanted to use that opportunity to give a shout out to Kenny. Miss you, Kenny. Hope you're doing well. Hope you do land a job. But this is even more of an opportunity for Jacques Vaughn to say, hey, I've been on Zoom calls. I've been on text message. I've been working with these guys, talking with these guys for the last 3 months. We're ready to go. And I'm going to stake my claim to be the full-time head coach going into next year after I show you what I can do with these guys. If he can come out there and make something out of nothing with, some of these guys that people haven't heard of, like Tyler Johnson and Justin Anderson and Jeremiah Martin, like if he can make something out of these guys, then he gets a step ahead of, I don't know who else is in the coaching search, but it definitely gives him a point when it comes time to see who's going to be the head coach for the Brooklyn Nets. All right, let's go for it. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, he's got to do it with, again, under unprecedented circumstances, almost with one hand tied behind his back. And so if he's able to do a strong job and get the most out of these guys, it's certainly a feather in his cap. I think that for Sean, he's going to be looking at a number of different things. He has a relationship with Jacques already. They have had a ton of conversations over the course of these past 3.5 months. And so there's a lot that's going to go into that decision-making on the next head coach, and Jacques certainly is in the driver's seat right now, and I'm very curious to see how guys respond to him over the course of these next few weeks.
I think they're going to respond well, and I think they're going to shock some people. And I'm obviously a homer. I'm rooting for the Nets. I can't wait to see it. Win, lose, draw, whatever. I think it's going to be an exciting time, and I'm rooting for it to actually happen. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about is this bubble is supposed to cost the NBA more than $150 million. Now, we saw Spence come out with a tweet where he said, if some of the world's best businesses or if some of the world's best business minds agree to invest $150 million into something, imagine the multiples they're expecting in return, not only this year, but in the future. And they're saying that this bubble is going to cost $1.5 million a day. And they're also talking about the coronavirus potentially stopping the restart. So let's talk about the finances and the money involved with this thing. What are you guys thinking about? If it actually does go down, we're going to get those TV deals. The TV money is going to come through. There's going to be advertisers involved. There's just going to be, more people talking about the NBA. But if the coronavirus shuts it down, it's going to be a huge loss. anything you guys got on how much it's going to cost daily overall, and what the coronavirus might actually do to stop this?
Yeah, well, again, the numbers continue to surge around the country, and Florida was certainly ambitious with reopening, and that's proven to backfire. And so that has a lot of caused a great deal of concern around the league in terms of reopening and how tight they can keep this bubble, and ensuring that everybody is going to be able to stay healthy throughout this entire process so that they can make money and salvage what's left of this season. And so that's Adam Silver's focus. That's the owner's focus. That's some of these players' focus as well, as opposed to a layoff that would last until December and all the money lost in that particular scenario. And so it's not going to be cheap to have 22 teams in one site and to shoot this and document this in a way that's interesting for the viewer. It's not just going to be basketball on a court and just looking like a local YMCA with NBA players because it may be easy to tune out. It is going to be stimulating television with numerous camera angles to keep people engaged, so that if you're passing through, flipping channels, you're like, oh my God, I need to keep it here. And to be able to stimulate a viewer the way that they need to, with the, you need a lot of bells and whistles, and that is not going to be cheap. So I can't wait to see what the NBA continues, what they're going to come up with in order to make this as entertaining as they need it to be without any fans there, to make it to make it must-see television, aside from just the fact that we're watching important basketball games leading into and through the playoffs. And so, and again, you're housing 22 teams, and then eventually 16, it'll go, lower and lower there in Orlando. And none of this is cheap. And so they're trying to salvage the season and make some of that money back. And Spencer and other people, cause for pause because yes, the dollar, all of that is extremely important, but all this is coming at a time where it seems like there are so many other important issues out there in the world.
And I think the one thing that you mentioned is that what they're doing is they're avoiding losing a lot of money, the money that they would have lost if everything did get shut down. But the one thing that I'm looking at with this is the NBA is doing it differently than the other leagues. They're putting everyone in one bubble. They're doing all of this in one, controlled area. Whereas, the NHL, they're doing hub cities. I know the NFL has talked a lot about doing hub cities, and those are two conflicting viewpoints. And I think it's going to be interesting to see which one of those ends up being the more successful method, whether it be, traveling to a couple of cities, but keeping players more spaced out, or, keeping everyone in one area. And I think one thing that comes from keeping everyone in one area, if they really want to hit this hard, is they put cameras everywhere. They put TV cameras, they put interview crews everywhere, just running around the hotel, getting interviews. Because think about it. Think about how many people tuned into The Last Dance. Like, tell me people would not tune in to watch what's essentially a reality show set in Disney World with all of the biggest NBA stars in the world.
Yeah, the production value is going to be so high. And like I said multiple times, how they package this and how they deliver it is paramount. Obviously with the social, racial tones and, speaking on injustice, but how do you make it entertaining for more than or less than casual fans? How do you make it entertaining for the person that is just tuning in because they want to see some live sports, or they're just tuning in because they are curious to learn, like, how is this actually going to happen? How's the NBA going to proceed? And speaking about the NBA proceeding, shout out to Adam Silver. I always say the NBA will lead and everyone else will follow. And he's been great. He spoke to Time Magazine and he said they're never full steam ahead on this, no matter what. One thing we're learning about this virus is it's unpredictable. We and our players together with the union look at the data on a daily basis. If there was something to change that was outside of the scope of what we were playing for, certainly we would revisit our plans. So he's basically telling you that, yes, there's money involved, there are plans, but we're not full steam ahead in this. Something can change, and we're open to that. It's not going to be a situation where we force our players into the bubble where it's not safe for them. He said, we're going to see as we go. Certainly if cases are isolated, that's one thing. A lot of the determination will be our understanding of how our community became infected. That will be part of our judgment in the terms of whether we should continue or not. But certainly if we had a lot of cases, we're going to stop. You can't run from this virus. I think that Adam Silver is a very smart guy. I think that some people are looking at the NBA as like, oh, this is a money grab. They're just trying to make the money back. No, I think the NBA is trying to give fans something to get away from, maybe their own personal problems, but also to focus on the problems of this country right now. I'm looking forward to it. And I want to switch gears and go on a little bit of a lighter note. Our guy, Stephen A. Smith, and our guy here at John Boy Media Talking, Jake, they had a similar take talking about the bubble, talking about players going into the bubble. And Stephen A. Smith said that, these players are going to leave for women. They're going to leave for their wives, their girlfriends, maybe even random women. Jokingly, Jake said, well, when the bubble guidelines came out, Jake said, well, what's the rules around butt? What's the rules around getting butt? Do they get Orlando girl butt? Do they bring in butt? Are they allowed? I'm thinking about it. These guys definitely, like, they're NBA players. They're millionaires. They're used to doing what they want to do. It's a joking matter, but these guys are going to want to leave. You can't just lock these guys up in Orlando and tell them, okay, if you're going to win the championship, you got to go 3 months without seeing your wife or girlfriend. What do you guys think? Would you guys be down for Orlando if you knew you had to kind of quarantine and stay abstinent for 3 months?
If you're a single guy on a team that's going to be projected to go deep in the postseason, that's a long time. If you're a team that's expected to be like if you're on the Wizards, for example, I'm sure you can keep it together. If you're on the Suns, I'm sure you can keep it together. But the intimacy part of it aside, just limited human interaction, period, for that longer period of time could drive certain guys insane. And so that certainly adds to the skepticism that you can control who comes into the bubble, who sneaks out of the bubble. This whole snitching thing, I saw this dude doing this or whatever. There's I think you used the word reality show. I mean, it could certainly be a reality show with what could unfold there in Orlando. So from a humorous standpoint, there's a human component to wanting that connection or wanting whatever it might be and wanting to split and do what you feel like you need to do. But the dangerous part for the league is the fact that, well, you're opening yourself up to this virus and this player comes back after having this interaction or whatever it may be, and then exposing so many different people. Like, these types of things, they're, hilarious to a certain standpoint, but it could really shut things down to a certain extent too. And so, it'll be something to keep an eye on.
Listen, that's why we have D'Angelo Russell sitting by the door at all times, working on that snitch policy, making sure if anyone leaves, he's checking people's credentials
on the hotline.
They don't need any security guards. They just need D'Angelo Russell watching all the entries and exits.
They're gonna have a big brother cam or like a Jersey Shore cam, like with the night vision, watching these guys' rooms as they're sneaking chicks in. All right, let's wrap this up. Last segment. What's on? I'll go first. I have nothing for you to watch. Do not watch TV this weekend. Go enjoy the 4th. Enjoy the holiday. I hope you're with your family and friends. But what I really hope is that you think about what this country is, right? Freedom, liberty, justice for all, celebrating independence this weekend. I want you to really think about where this country is and what this country is supposed to be. And keep your eyes open and keep your cameras rolling. People might be a little crazy this weekend, drinking, partying, doing whatever. A lot of people going viral these days. So keep your eyes open, keep your cameras rolling. Don't sit in the house. Don't watch TV. Go out and about, see some loved ones and have a good time. Hudson, you got anything for this?
Yeah, let me give you guys a quick insight into the production that goes into making an episode of Talking Nets. We have a notes document where we put all of our things, we have all of our things laid out. We have our categories, what we're going to talk about, all of our notes. And at the end, it says, what's on? And it says Keith and Hudson. Keith put his thing in before I did. So, and I knew I was going to have to follow that up. And, that's tough because I can't say, oh, go watch, whatever. because Keith, he really upstaged me. He said, be that social justice warrior. So I'm just going to say July 3rd, watch Hamilton. It's coming out on Disney Plus. It's related to all of that. It's a good play. I don't know. Just watch it. That's all I got.
That's a great one. We're going to the Disney bubble. Watch Disney Plus, Hamilton, America. I've never seen the Hamilton play, and I've been actually looking for something to watch on Disney Plus. So that was a good job, Hudson. Great job. Grady, you have anything for the people to tune into on Netflix or Amazon Prime? We usually close with like something for people to go watch.
Ooh, no, nothing to watch. Just like you guys both said, stay abreast of what's happening socially in this country, and like you said, the people who were a part of building this country and the Declaration of Independence, all these different type of things. They wrote words that we can all appreciate, and all men created equal and all these type of things, but they weren't living it. And so those people I don't necessarily celebrate, but I certainly want to live a life where those words can be true, and that we all can be equal. We can all look at each other as equal. We can all be accepted, understand that Black Lives Matter, and the need to continue to speak out on that and try to bring about change in this country. So celebrate with your families, and keep that in mind. Let your voices continue to be heard, and be safe. Be safe not only with the virus, but we all know that on July 5th, all the viral videos of people who shot themselves in the face with fireworks come out. So do not be one of those people. Be safe with the fireworks.
Keep the camera rolling.
That's right. Yeah.
Don't get JPP'd.
That's right. So yeah, be safe.
All right, Talking Nets family, let's wrap this up. Leave a voicemail. If you want to be heard on Talking Nets, leave a voicemail, 201-870-0461. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or don't, at Keith McPherson, my first and last name. Make sure you follow Talking Nets, though, Instagram and Twitter, at Talking Nets. Hudson, where can the people find you online?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at @HudsonFlynn_. I'd like you to follow me. Just don't be mean. No clowns. Get out of here. We've had a lot of anonymous clowns showing up on the Talking Nets social media recently. Yeah. So if you're going to be a clown, please be a clown, but don't be an anonymous clown.
I got smoke for these clowns. You're not going to come at Hudson and not see me. I'm popping up and I'm coming right at you, anonymous clowns. Grady, what about you? Tell people where they can find you online.
Yeah, on Twitter at Grady, at Grady, and then on Instagram at @TheMichaelGrady on IG. We'll be broadcasting games July 31st. So of course, find us on Yes Network as we prepare to get things ramped up, and we'll have programming on Yes Network, getting everybody prepared for Orlando.
Gotta follow the company, follow the brand, #NetsOnYes. Yes, follow our company and our brand at John Boy Media. Make sure you subscribe to the pod. Make sure you rate the pod and leave a review. Grady was on the pod. What a guest. Write something about Michael Grady coming on Talking Nets. We will see you next Thursday. That's all we got for you. Thanks again, Talking Nets crew. We love you guys. Let's go Nets, bro.